Local and federal policymakers, today I will be speaking to you as a public health youth ambassador on why we should protect our public lands. Most people won't notice if public land gets sold until their favorite hikes, fishing spots, and weekend lake trips vanish. Then tourism dollars disappear and health complications steadily rise. This is the future if our lands get sold. As a public health youth ambassador and someone who's utilized these spaces for own recreation and movement, I've seen firsthand how these lands aid physical and mental well-being, especially in low-income and underserved communities. Today, I'll be specifically talking about why selling federally managed public land puts our health and economy at risk. The points being covered today will be risk to our own health, the unequal distribution and access to these lands, and how it affects our local and state and national-wide economy. If we look at the health factor first, according to the Public Lands Alliance, 1/3 of the US, or 640 million acres, is federally managed public land. While there is this wide distribution of access that we have, we are not utilizing it to our full capacity when we could be using it to help reverse some of the chronic diseases that have plagued this nation. The UN brought up a good point about ecosystems and the nutrients that would be deprived if we were to get rid of these lands. The Department of the Interior was also concerned about how we lose clean air and water that nature naturally filters. If we in turn lose these lands, we are taking in contaminated air and water. We will also see a rise in fossil fuel emissions that worsen chronic diseases such as asthma, COPD, obesity, and mental health. One solution that the Bureau of Land Management recommended was forest bathing, which is spending time in nature that helps reduce cortisol stress levels and better our mental health. If we take a look at the image inserted, we can see Bumblebee attempting to fight a rubber duck, and we can see that this fight is very unequal. This is true to the access of these lands. Many low-income and colored communities don't have enough access to these lands compared to those in high-income areas. According to the Center for American Progress, the distribution of nature is very unequal. With this quote, the unequal distribution of nature in America and the unjust experiences that many people of color have in the outdoors is a problem that national, state, and local leaders can no longer ignore. Also brought to us by the Trust for Public Land, they stated that 42% less public land was available to these low-income communities compared to those in higher-income areas. This affects our economy too. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, specifically the Economic Service Research, stated that these public lands bring in money for our economy, health outcomes, and education. It was also stated that counties around these lands experience much more job growth than counties without them. If we get rid of these public lands, recreational money is diminished. If we think about national parks alone, we know how busy they get in the summer and how much tourism money they bring in. National parks are said to bring in hundreds of billions of dollars annually, and without that, we are really stressing our economy as a whole nation. On August 19th, 2025, the CBS News covered a story about the National River Gorge National Park. It was a newly established national park that since has seen double numbers in local jobs and in total visitor spending money. We can see that in the graph I inserted below. We can see the difference between 2020 and 2023 as those numbers continue to rise. Another thing we are all familiar with is the Big Beautiful Bill, and we can see this and know this from the Medicare and Medicaid cuts that were put into motion. This also affects low-income and colored communities, as many of them rely on Medicare and Medicaid, and a lot of them don't have the extra spending money to join a commercial gym. Therefore, they rely on these public lands for their own movement. The Big Beautiful Bill originally had the selling and consenting of selling 3.3 million acres of land to help make room for the housing and overpopulated crisis that we had in the nation. It was then since taken out as there was an outcry from the public about selling these national parks. In closing, I want to urge everyone, even the policymakers, to take action. Advocate for yourself. Nature is not a luxury, and we can't keep putting it aside and taking it for granted. Those in power, even the policymakers in front of us, and those even higher, consider nature as an expendable factor. They see it as something they can get rid of easily and don't really care about the effects it has on everyone else. As I mentioned in the Big Beautiful Bill, regardless of party affiliation, we need to first tackle this problem as humans first. When did clean water, clean air, and the health for our children become a bargaining piece? We need to advocate altogether for policies that protect access and equity to these lands before everything that I stated before comes into action